Hello everyone and welcome back to the show. Thank you all for listening wherever you may be. This is Nathan Mottee and today draws closer to dark days with the upcoming federal election and lack of awareness our people are in. We need to wake up the people before it is too late, but by doing so we need to focus more on the family element because we are more miserable than we have ever been. Because we live in a society that is constantly lectured about how it should be ashamed of itself, and promotes degeneracy and brainwashes us to be miserable. With platforms like Netflix that romanticize suicide, and I say this after a 12-year-old girl recently committed suicide after watching 13 Reasons Why, and promoting homosexuality by introducing gay LGBT characters on a majority of their shows. I'm not against gay or trans people, but it's worth pointing out on a platform that targets mostly the millennial generation, and any kid can easily access this service. They just need a friend's account. We saw in a Canadian subway a billboard promoting homosexuality. Take pride in the sex you want, with three men naked rubbing up against each other in a public place. So we see that this LGBT push is happening in the education system across Western civilization, and it's just a bit over the top. So Netflix, they're either completely blind to this, they just want money, or there's something more sinister. So that's why we need strong relationships with our friends and family and interact with our fellow human being, not just the followers we have on social media. With the decline on people getting married and marriage rates decreasing, this has a lot to do with the divide and conquer agenda that has been brought on us by special interest and the divisiveness of political thought. Left and right is tearing us apart more than ever, and making us more addicted to social media, which is used by children more than us. And it's also ripping apart society and manipulating us to be against each other. And we've got a few topics we're going to get into on this podcast, but before we get into that first topic, I'm going to introduce the returning guest and highly influential and motivated political person is Baden Mottee. How are you doing today, brother?
Good to be here, bro, and definitely good to feature on your show again. It's an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, man. So we're currently with the Wagga election that's just coming up. So the upcoming state election. So I'm pretty sure the independent candidate Joe McGirr is still holding that seat. He's the 6th MP of Wagga. But so when we look at the other candidates, we got Nationals candidate Michael McCormack. I don't know if that other female Nationals candidate is still a part of this.
Power, no, she's just volunteering for them.
State. So Michael McCormack, I think we got Ray Goodglass for the Greens.
No.
No, he was there on the first day I saw.
He's a volunteer. It's a state election, so states Ray and stuff. But I think even Ray could go for upper, but they've chosen another candidate, I believe, for the Greens.
Dan Haynes.
No.
I saw him there.
He'll be volunteering as well. Yeah, same party, man. But just different position.
What about Julia Ham?
No, there's no Liberals.
No Liberals.
Oh, well, Nationals, pretty much the same. So a vote for a Liberal is a vote for a National.
Because I heard somewhere that she was running again, even though the massive loss she had last year.
She'll probably try next state election, maybe. We'll see.
There was also a One Nation candidate. Do you know her name?
No, but I know that I haven't seen any volunteers for them. I've seen a couple of signs. But apparently they're going to have someone here between now and when the election finishes.
Alright, so the candidate that we're currently helping is Richard Foley for the United Australia Party, and only recently Clive Palmer visited Wagga to campaign. It was certainly interesting meeting Clive. He's very dedicated, but it's still early, and things will be heating up soon. And we'll be out campaigning for Richard Foley, which I hope wins this seat.
United Australia Party, yeah.
Alright, so we'll just touch down on the. Who do you think will win, actually?
I believe the way it currently is, we don't have any other independents. There's only Greens, Nationals, Labor, Clive Park, United Australia Party, and apparently One Nation. How I can see it is that I don't know. Oh, okay, that a lot of people say that the Conservative parties will preference the Liberals, which they are in many places. But with the Nationals, I don't know. I think it will probably be the same thing anyway, but it might not. It's just a matter of whether who preferences who. But my honest opinion, I think who will win would probably be between the Nationals or Labor. But I also think that Clive has a good chance. Richard has a good chance.
Yes, definitely I agree. Let's touch down on this federal election, which will be on the 18th of May. Things are heating up on that one, especially. Scott Morrison's just been recently egged. But before we get into that, the latest hit job that was done on One Nation by Al Jazeera, that documentary, which is affecting them a fair bit. So Scott Morrison came out saying he will be preferencing Labor and the Greens over One Nation. Now, we already know that one of the major parties already have the seat secure. Preferences from the Conservative Party will only solidify Liberals' reign and failure to join minor parties together. And Morrison's latest flip-flops have only steered his leanings for Labor, and the Morrison government came out saying they will put people in jail for 5 years for online trolling. Despite these attacks on One Nation, they have gained more popularity, and people are sick and tired of politicians' virtue signalling and this political correctness, constant crap. We see constant attacks by left-wing activists on everything, speaking events, news articles, conservative journalists, like Andrew Bolt. He's recently having a little bit of a war with Richard and Natalie. But so while we're out campaigning, but this political correctness has gone too far, and that's it. That's what they use it for. It's their greatest tool is to use this political correctness. Like Bill Shorten, he's the biggest fan of it. Bill Shorten's just the biggest liar. And his great economic scheme could wipe $264 billion from the economy and kill off 167,000 jobs, as said by Brian Fisher. Also, the absurd Safe Schools program they're pushing for now. And this is just a whole different kettle of fish, and I urge anyone to research for themselves. But it's frightening how far they are pushing for this equality has gotten. It's a mind state that is setting us up for complete state control. In the UK, 5-year-olds will be forced to learn about gay and trans studies. A father in Canada was found guilty for family violence. And get this, for calling his trans daughter a she. So this mind state is highly contagious and is spreading all through Western society. People virtue signaling. The state just want to control our children, and they don't seem to see it that way. What do you think?
Well, that's just the definitive example of ideological political extremism. Is that extremism isn't necessarily defined as being a far-left communist or a far-right white supremacist or a national socialist Nazi, even though some people right at this point would think the Nazis were left-wing, well, economically left-wing, but their social policies were more right-wing, as I don't see nationalism really being a focus on the left wing of the Overton window. In addition to that, another thing that pisses me off is how, with the scandal with One Nation, is that the media try to play this whole like expectation that people in political office just must be moral Puritans and pathological altruists, and that they are incapable of having any form of moral corruption or doing any wrong or anything like that. And the realistic, like getting into politics with a passion, a goal, and you want to preserve and you want to increase yourself in the hierarchy in order to have a better chance of implementing your values. Realize it's a battle arena. People like. You can't just expect every single person in a position of power to be perfectly honest, because one, like, it just doesn't work that way. Leaders all throughout history who have been perfectly honest and telling everything how it is, most people don't want the honesty. That most people want the honesty that fits their narrative. To come out and say cigarettes are killing us, we should get rid of cigarettes because the tobacco companies are making billions of dollars of the deaths of tens to hundreds of thousands of people every year. And it's like people are like, oh, that's my right to smoke. You're a dictator or and whatever, this and that. It's like, it's better for them, but they don't want to hear that because that's their pleasure. That's what they like. They don't want to hear what's better for them. They want to enjoy to continue to bask in these self-indulgent kind of forms of lifestyle. And yeah, like the reality is, any politician who pretends to be pure and it's like Scott Morrison in the debate last night. Shorten said something about tactics, and Morrison's like, oh no, politics isn't about tactics, it's about standing for what you believe in. And I was like, that's the most bullshit. That was a tactic itself. It's just the most, like, trying to play like, oh no, I'm so honest and pure. Politics is not about tactics, it's about standing up for what you believe in, man. And it's just like, no, like, he's lying to himself and he's lying to other, but just trying to play this like humble kind of good understanding card. It's bullshit. Absolute bullshit.
Yeah, this virtue signaling's fucking destroying society. Green supporters, just a classic example of people that don't know what they're doing and they're walking in thinking they know what they're doing. Oh, Greens and Labor, yep, that's my pick. And, just because you hear it from the mainstream media, doesn't mean that, that the others are wrong. But...
Well, in regards to political correctness, you ask someone on the far left, can political correctness go too far? They either won't answer you or they'll deny it. It's like any ideological doctrine can go too far. You can't just pick and choose and say, oh, an ideological doctrine is absolutely, like, just absolutely invulnerable to being translated or corrupted in any way by the human condition which exists in humanity, because it's relative. Some people might think, oh, political correctness doesn't go too far or anything, but, like, are they the one who, like, in their minds, they're setting, like, what rules are they setting? What boundaries are they setting? They're not. And they don't realize is that their lack of ability to rationally translate an ideological doctrine, such as political correctness, allows them to, attain a more, or manifest a more radical kind of way of seeing it. And it's like, so you don't think, saying considering penmanship being offensive a little too far? You don't think like this, like, and it's not just, that's the double standards behind it as well. You've got people who are attacked for this whole blackface thing, but then like white chicks, like, it's the double what. So you're white, you can't do the blackface thing, but if you're black, you can do the white, like white, you dress up like you're white, make them like white chicks, like, and it's like we might as well just start a huge boycott against that movie and start, but we don't care. Because, honestly, that's just how society... We don't care about that shit. It doesn't bother us, man, But to the frail-minded people who have no emotional regulation or even fundamental understanding of discipline, they're the weakest ones in society. And because of the weakest ones, it's their problem. They're the ones who don't have the ability to strengthen their discipline or regulate their emotion. And because of that, we have to pay as a consequence for their inability to develop themselves as individuals. We, as society, have to pay as a consequence. And then what do we have to pay as a consequence? The abandonment of the truth, because it might hurt feelings.
Yeah.
But, the left can talk about whatever they want. That's so controversial. You know, or fucking Anzac Day is just commemorating murderers. That's fine. But Israel Folau talks and brings up a whole list of different people who won't go to heaven or will go to hell, and homosexuals happens to be one of them. Like, people don't care about the any other name on the list but homosexuals. It's like this selective outrage, man.
If homosexuals came out saying that we're all going to burn in hell, you know, I wouldn't take that as an offence. I'd not care, you know.
Yeah.
But we touched down just before on Scott Morrison, 5 years jail for online trolling. It's not only the online trolls they're coming for, but there was recently a purge on Facebook, and this purge should send chills down everyone's spines. We saw poor Joseph Watson, Alex Jones, Laura Loomer, Milo Yiannopoulos, and several other conservative figures outright unpersoned and banned for sharing opposing views to Zuckerberg, which is basically what it is. And which makes it hard to share publicly and get your message out there when Facebook, YouTube, Twitter are the biggest tech companies out there. We should all be allowed to listen to people like Alex Jones and think for ourselves, no matter how wrong it may be. That's our individual right. And some people are celebrating the latest ban, but don't seem to realise this wasn't just a conservative ban. This targeted people on the right and the left, and will only continue. Anyone that speaks against the government with facts will ultimately face the same fate. If we won't stand up for their free speech, we may as well stand up for no free speech at all. Not only shutting down free speech, but critical thought. And anyone that talks about these people will also be banned. This isn't just a digital book burning, but people's bank accounts are being removed for having the wrong opinion. This is election meddling. This controls the political conversation people are allowed to have. This is starting to sound like the China's social credit system with the latest purge on Facebook. What you got any thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, man. It's the, like, free speech. It's really relative to the people in power, isn't it? You know, like, how would I put it out? Like, for example, man, like, it's got all these different thoughts at once. The whole issue with free speech at the moment is, it's like, you can address an issue about, say, radical Islam, okay? Now, you can even substantiate your claim with facts. But what people and what the left are doing, and even at the fault of some of the right, is that the way they use subjective words and the way they articulate their either criticism or concern or just blatant attack on you know, a culture or an issue, right? It's how we articulate it. It's how we are able to solidify our argument and build it with defenses so it's almost impenetrable. Because we can make good cases against a lot of these issues, but the problem is when you speak, you use the facts, but then you relate to you regard immigrants as invaders. The connotations behind invaders obviously it's hostilic, it's hostile, you know, like all people who that's easily interpretable as like, okay, so this person thinks that immigrants are invaders, therefore this person thinks that any person who comes here to be an immigrant has some disingenuous motive in line to invade and ultimately manifest some kind of control or overthrow of the Western civilization and its values, okay? Like, there's no doubt that people are like that, but to say that all of them are like that or address immigrants as invaders is a generalist statement. And
uneducated, yeah.
And this is where the right start going down, is they, just like the left, they address these concerns with more hostile language than more informative kind of discourse. And you can just kind of tell the difference between someone who has more of a informed and more like semantically correct, or at least semantically like a better semantical way of conveying an argument, as opposed to your moron retards like Neil Erickson, who will just say they're all invaders, mate. They're fucking all invaders. They're all the same. Like, that is people like that who give the left the fucking keys to increase censorship, to increase political correctness. It's like they're the ones who want to enforce it. All right, they're the ones who want to enforce it, no doubt. But we are the ones giving them the ammunition and the tools to do it, because the right, or a lot of conservatives, or just the mainstream kind of understanding with things is like it's it's a lack of articulation and a lack of balance and pragmatism and rationale when it comes to addressing these arguments, and it's more based on a hostile form of discourse or dialect, and that is why the left have the case to use these dickhead extremists on the right to use them as a perfect example of why society needs to be more politically correct. But the thing is like the left, the far left too, more specifically, in their own way, it's the same principle. Like, you're right, you're a conservative, you can't talk about radical Islam, but then they can go on tirades about white Europeans and how bad we are for being white people, and how bad, like, it's the same. It's just the utter hypocrisy and double standards of it, man, are unfathomable. Yeah.
Alright, well, there's a couple more topics I wanted to get into. Let's get into this egg girl. So the latest situations regarding Scott Morrison and egg girl. Her name was Amber Page. The 24-year-old Victorian woman was charged with common assault and possessing a prohibited drug, which officers found cannabis after she was taken to the Albury police station. She allegedly egged the Prime Minister for humanitarian reasons relating to the refugees on Manus Island. This took place at a Country Women's Association meeting. This just outlines the attacks from the left-wing activists that the mainstream media failed to recognise. The Greens that masqueraded as virtuous and tolerant just can't contain themselves. She was a Green supporter. This has been an attack on conservatives, and this was a copycat incident that was inspired from Egg Boy that egged Fraser Anning early this year. Egg Boy was not charged, which I found idiotic, because these politicians are supposed to be representing the nation. Arguably, a lot of them aren't doing that. But the principle still remains, and although Egg Girl was charged, we need to acknowledge the importance of principles, and regardless of positions of power, this is still classified as assault. So the Greens activist Amber Page only shows how far the Greens and their supporters are willing to go to undermine their opposition. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, well, it's just, no matter what side of politics you are, that's how it's always going to be, man. You have your free speech so-called absolutists on the right, and you're like, okay, well, the definition of absolutism is like the uncompromising kind of belief to a doctrine or an ideology or a form of thought or something like that. It's like no matter what, I'm an absolutist on this. So if I'm a free speech absolutist, that by definition would be, I believe in free speech irrespective of what's said or the circumstances, and I believe in the person's right to say it, even to the point I'll defend the person's right to say it. Okay, and then you ask them a question, it's like, okay, if you're the leader of this country, and that Abu al-Baghdadi, or whatever his name is, the leader of ISIS, wanted to come to Australia to do a national tour around universities to preach the Islamic State's message and talk about, the jihad and Islam and how, just the what's it called, the caliphate, and just to kind of IS ideology. It's like, if you're the leader, as a conservative leader, would you allow Baghdadi or any form of high up Islamic extremists to come to Australia to be able to do national tours at universities and talk. Like, no, obviously not. And if they do, then they're lying, because if they're in a set of circumstances, then they wouldn't. But then the other thing is, like, and this always gets them. Okay, you're a free speech absolutist. Okay, you've got a guy running around town calling you a pedophile, telling everyone that you're a pedophile. Every time you walk out the door, you get people attacking you and fucking, you've got mobs chasing you and such and such. It's like, would you defend that person's, to the death, that person's right to call you a pedophile? Of course not. Then they'll say, oh, that's slander and defamation. It's like, okay, so you acknowledge that slander and defamation are involved with free speech. Then you're not a free speech absolutist. A free speech absolutist would disregard censorship, not censorship, would disregard defamation and slander. They would, because that's an absolutist. Irrespective of defamation and slander laws, I'm an absolutist for free speech. You should still be able to have free speech and have no consequences whatsoever on your actions. So, by that logic, then you should do nothing when someone's calling you a pedophile around town and people are bashing you to defend yourself. Nothing at all. And then the left did the same thing as well. The left like to say that they're for free speech, they're just against hate speech. But then what's hate speech? How do they define hate speech? You know, hate speech is really anything that contradicts their extremist narrative. You know, like you say, I don't have a problem with homosexuality or LGBTQ community at all. Honestly, I'm trying to find the best way to be able to compromise to them. And what I can do at the moment is, I don't think it's fair to say we've got to ban the mainstreaming of homosexual kind of sexuality and culture without saying that we should just ban the mainstreaming of all sexuality in our culture. Because yes, mainstreaming homosexuality in our culture will have an influence on the minds of people, especially when it's in a cultural set of trends now where it's like starting to get to the point it's in to be gay or trans or whatever, and it's going to definitely have an influence on, there's people who might naturally think that way, but people who might be programmed and influenced that way as they get older. And the same thing goes with, you know, the mainstreaming of normal sexualization, right? It's not too different, because in the same, it's still detrimental, like you said. This mainstreaming of porn and sexualization of culture makes it dissolves our sense of loyalty, our sense of commitment. Our divorce rates increasing. Relationship spans don't last anywhere near as long as they used to. People are having more and more partners than than they've ever had. Than they had fucking 30, 50, 60 years ago in the common kind of part of society. It's like it did exist then, but it's way more prevalent now. And that's, leading to the dissolution of the family unit. So if you're a conservative who believes in the unity of the family unit, in which I do as well, then you've got to accept that homosexual kind of mainstreaming of homosexual gay culture isn't the only detrimental problem to the family unit. It's the mainstreaming of all sexualization in society that is detrimental to the family unit. And we can't have it one way or the other. It's got to be both ways. I'm not against sexualization or pornography or anything like that. I just think that there needs to be control to it, and I think that we shouldn't have to have posters up, whether it's gay or sexual propaganda, straight or gay propaganda. I think sexuality needs to be kept inside the bedroom and not platformed, because I know it's a commercial gain of revenue and so many people buy into it, but that's just perpetuating the destruction of our society.
Yeah, well, it dominates our fucking entertainment industry, music, rap. It all involves fucking. Have we done that to ourselves, or is it a secret agenda going on?
It's both, man. Yeah. A lot of people say, whether or not it's true, we can all speculate that the left or that the elite are engineering these problems in society, and it's like we can only speculate. Like, it's hard to completely substantiate it, but it doesn't mean that the way society is going, that there are still a lot of negative consequences to the way society is, and we have to address that. Whether or not we can substantiate that it's some engineered kind of conspiracy by an elite group, which I think it probably is, or at least it's taken advantage of, I can't give that 100% tangible proof to that, but I know that the way society is going now, whether it's engineered or not, the consequences of these I guess, beams in society in which we which we base our way of thinking and our lifestyles from, are still highly detrimental to the individual and the development of the individual.
Yeah, I agree. We're all humans. We all fall for temptations, but what it comes down to is we all need that bit of control so we all don't lose our sanity, right?
Yeah.
All right, I'll just finish up with one last topic. I like to touch down on the yellow vest. So the 25th straight weekend of the yellow vest protests had just occurred. It was recorded as their lowest turnout yet on Saturday.
Yeah, it's going to die out, man, unfortunately.
This was only days after the May Day rally. The May Day rally had violent clashes in Paris, but Macron delivered a speech last week. He proposed solutions to the economic problems raised by Yellow Vest protesters, and the Yellow Vest activists were unimpressed and said it was not at all satisfactory. With high expectations, it was bound to be disappointing, said a prominent Yellow Vest activist. In that speech, Macron acknowledged Islamic extremism as a threat to the French public.
Racist, fucking Islamophobe.
Yeah. He also pledged to cut income taxes for middle-class workers, but the time is long overdue and globalist Macron has ignored the French public for far too long. So the protests saw 18,900 marching across the nation, and in addition, some yellow vests joined a rally against climate change in the northern city of Metz, where G7 environment ministers were meeting. The demonstration gathered 3,000 participants, and in contrast, tens of thousands of Labour Union and Yellow Vest protesters had taken to the streets in demonstrations that saw clashes between Black Bloc anarchists and police. So basically, on May Day, the protests involved people on all fronts. We saw environmental activists, communist activists, and even Kurdish activists. The Black Bloc were throwing bottles at police, and the police responded with tear gas. But the government deployed 7,400 officers and detained more than 250 people in Paris. And supposedly, May Day had nothing to do with the Yellow Vest protest. They called it a workers' celebration. So Rodriguez, the man that lost sight in one eye in January, he's become a prominent activist for the Yellow Vest and highly supportive of the May Day. So they're actually expanding their protests a bit more. They're involving a lot more people, and the May Day one, I think, had a lot more to do with the Black Bloc, and it had a lot of violence with police as well. So, how do you think that that's turning out?
I honestly think that it's slowly going to die out, man. I think Macron's got his chess pieces positioned in the right spots now. And I think that, like I've always said, it should have been much quicker than it has taken out now. I still support the Yellow Vest movement. But with any dynamic of power and a huge group of people opposing a government, there is no guarantee that every single person who opposes the government A, for the same reasons, or B, they have the same for the same reasons as everyone else, or B, that they have all some kind of unified ideological understanding in which what they would implement if they were to overthrow the Macron government. Because if they did throw the Macron government, then it would go to a civil war because there'd be different factions of the Yellow Vest and the people of France fighting amongst one another in order to, determine who's going to lead the next regime. So I think that the way like the Black Bloc processes are and shit like that, it's that's just what you expect. The Black Blocs should be fucking shot, but what can you do, man? All you can do is just kind of hope for the best, but we can't expect there to be a successful kind of revolution in France.
Well, I think the Black Bloc were actually cooperating with the Yellow Vest.
Oh, well,
they're probably just a little bit more violent fucking force we probably need.
Oh, they're not. The Black Bloc, man, they're just, you know who they are, bro.
Anarchists, yeah.
If they got what they want, they wouldn't help.
They don't have a solution, yeah.
They don't have a solution, but they wouldn't do anything, bro. They're just a bunch of fucking broke fucking nobodies with no understanding of political or structural system. They just like have an understanding of the issues in the world, but they have no idea how to fix them or understanding of how intrinsically deep those issues are. So, you've got a bunch of like 20 to 30-year-old anarchists. You give them a position of power in government, and they're just going to be like everyone else. They're going to just form corruption, and it's just the same fucking repeated process, man.
And while this happens, what do our Australian activists do? So, kids as young as 10, they trashed the politician's office and they were yelling, kill ScoMo, while they skipped, school for climate change.
Yeah.
So that's what our activists are doing.
Yeah, 100%, man. Yeah, well, that just shows ideological possession. Like, bro, ideological extremism is not exclusive to the left, nor is it exclusive to the right or one single form of thinking. Ideological extremism is the inability to obtain a rational thought in regards to what you believe or stand for. Ideological extremism is that extreme bias that one has to their doctrines or their subscription of thought, and the inability to see any other form of perspective, and then they have this kind of absolutist way, and absolutism is another symptom of ideological possession.
Well, yeah, that's been a good video, and we're going to finish it up here.
Thank you. It was good to be here, bro.
Yeah, thanks for coming on again, bro. We'll definitely have you again for more appearances. I'd like to thank everybody for listening and tuning in. The country's it's going downhill. Whether it's economically or culturally or whatever. We're losing our ways, and these authoritarian yuppies seem to be calling the shots. So remember, guys, we got to move over to alternative platforms. Facebook is just constantly censoring and undermining everybody. The algorithms is just ridiculous, and you're not being able to hear the actual truth of things. So if we move over to platforms like Minds, which is what I actually recommend at the moment after looking a bit into MeWe and who owns MeWe, gave me a little bit suspicious. So I recommend to move over to platforms like Minds and Gab. Apparently there's a couple of streaming platforms you can move over to, like BitChute, and there's another one. So just remember, guys, if we want to take back our country from these globalists and stop globalism and revive the Australian spirit, we have to compromise and be willing to move over to these platforms, because Facebook, it's just going downhill more and more. Same as YouTube, they're censoring more and more people. Twitter as well isn't much any better. So we're going to try and move over to these other platforms, give them a check out and see what we can do. So this is Nathan Mottee, and thank you everybody for listening. Thanks, Baden.
My pleasure, bro. It was great to be here.
And we'll probably have Clint on the show again and some other guests. So thank you everyone, and see you soon.